When we analyze the rhetoric of a text, we are examining what a writer does to achieve their purpose and why they do it this way. In other words, we're looking for the different rhetorical choices that a writer makes. That is, the specific techniques they use, the means, and their intended effects on the audience, or the ends. When you're first assigned a text for rhetorical analysis, the task can feel overwhelming. As we've seen, effective writers can pack so much meaning into a single sentence. How are we supposed to analyze even a short, persuasive text in full? How can we begin to explain all the little nuances of a well-written text? Where do we start? Well, rhetorical analysis is never an easy thing to do, but I do have some advice to avoid feeling overwhelmed by it. For one, focus on the rhetorical choices that are most important. Remember, you're never expected to analyze every single thing in a text. Next, always fall back on the three means of persuasion, those three appeals. This is especially helpful if you're just not able to see rhetorical techniques right away. And lastly, develop a consistent method for approaching every rhetorical analysis. And that's what this lesson is all about, helping you develop that method. My method for rhetorical analysis has 5 steps. Step 1, read the text for comprehension. Step 2, analyze the rhetorical situation. Step 3, read the text for rhetorical techniques. Step 4, analyze the intended effects and rhetorical constraints behind those techniques. And finally, Step 5, connect to supporting purposes. Step 1, read the text for comprehension. This should be an obvious first step. After all, you have to understand what a text says before you can dig into its rhetoric. I like to mark and annotate key ideas as I go along just to keep my reading focused. Step 2, analyze the rhetorical situation. Go back through the text and mark the elements of the rhetorical situation that appear directly on the page. You want to annotate to elaborate on the element's significance as you've practiced in previous exercises. For any elements that aren't printed directly on the page, go ahead and write those out and label them. This is what you'll mainly have to do with message, exigence, and purpose, as the background information in the text itself will rarely contain those explicitly stated. Step 3, read the text for rhetorical techniques. Read the text a second time and mark and label the rhetorical techniques that you see. No need to go into great detail here, just label them like you've done in previous exercises. Step 4, analyze the intended effects and rhetorical constraints behind the techniques you identified. There's no need to do this for every single rhetorical technique you found. Just go back through and pick out 5 or 6 of what you think are the most important techniques. And for each of those 5 or 6, find space on the page somewhere to describe the intended effect of the technique on the audience. You also want to note the specific rhetorical obstacle that the technique is addressing. For now, go ahead and ignore rhetorical advantages. We won't include those as a part of our rhetorical analysis process until later in this unit. Step 5, connect to supporting purposes. Out of the 5 or 6 rhetorical choices you've analyzed, whittle that list down to just 2 or 3. The number should depend on the assignment. What you want to do with those remaining 2 or 3 is identify the supporting purposes that each rhetorical choice is working to achieve. And you might have some rhetorical choices that are working to achieve the same purpose. There may be some overlap there, or they may all be looking to achieve different purposes. The point of this final step is just to acknowledge that different rhetorical choices work differently to achieve different rhetorical goals. One thing that developing writers often make the mistake of doing in rhetorical analysis is they try to connect every rhetorical choice just back to the primary purpose, which is not really how carefully crafted texts work. Remember, a skilled writer is going to try to achieve these smaller supporting purposes that, when put together, achieve that ultimate primary purpose.